Let us begin by reading the word problem out loud. A large water tank contains 550 gallons of water. Unknowingly, it began to leak at a rate of 4 gallons per hour. The crack was patched up as soon as it was noticed. However, there were now only 478 gallons of water remaining in the tank. For how many hours was the water storage tank leaking? Let us begin our strategy for problem solving by analyzing the problem. The first thing we want to do when analyzing the problem is identify the question being asked. In this case, the question is, for how many hours was the water storage tank leaking? So now that we know what it is we're trying to find, we now know what our unknown variable is going to represent. So let us go ahead and jump to step 2 and assign a variable. Keep in mind that when assigning a variable, ideally all we're doing is we're rephrasing the question into a statement. So in this case, we'll use the variable x, and again, you can use any variable you would like, but we're going to have x represent the amount of hours that the water storage tank was leaking for. So now that we've assigned a variable, let us continue analyzing the word problem. So let's see what other information we can extract. Well, we know that the large water tank contains 550 gallons of water. So 550, that's the amount of gallons of water that were in the tank before the leak. And then a leak happened. And what else do we know? Well, we know that the water tank began to leak at a rate of 4 gallons per hour. So every hour there's 4 less gallons in the tank. And then also, we know that once the leak was patched up, there were only 478 gallons of water remaining in the tank. So we'll go ahead and note that. So now we have all the information that we need to go ahead and form an equation. So let us go ahead and do so. So our equation is going to have the following structure. So it's going to follow as gallons intake now. Well, that's going to be equal to the number of gallons of water that were originally in the tank minus the gallons that were lost due to the leak. So let's go ahead and start filling it in. So let's see, what do we know? Always start off with the equal sign. Now, gallons intake now. Well, after the leak occurred, we knew that there were 478 gallons left. So that means there's 478 gallons in the tank left over. And then that's going to be equal to the number of gallons originally in the tank. Well, we know that the tank originally had 550 gallons. And we're going to want to subtract from that the gallons that were lost due to the leak. So now the question is, how do we find that out? Well, we want to fill in this quantity, and we actually have an equation for that that's related to rate. So I'm going to go ahead and post it up at the top. And that's going to be quantity is equal to rate times time. So we actually know both of these. We know the rate is 4, which is the number of gallons that are leaking per hour. We're going to go ahead and multiply that by the time. The time, that's what we're looking for, and it's represented by a variable x. So we're going to go ahead and substitute that in. So we end up subtracting from our equation 4x. So there we go. That's going to be the equation we're going to work with. So let us go ahead and solve it now. So we'll start off with copying the equation down. So 478 is equal to 550 minus 4x. So when solving, you want to get the variable completely by itself. Right now we're multiplying it by a negative 4 and adding to it 550. So we always want to undo either addition or subtraction. In this case, we have a positive 550, so we want to undo that. The only way to undo it is through negativity. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 550 from both sides. So by doing so, on the right hand side of the equation, we end up with a positive 550 and a negative 550, simplifying out. So all that's left is a negative 4x. And then on the left-hand side, once you do 478 minus 550, you end up with negative 72. So now again, we want to get the x variable completely by itself. Right now we're multiplying it by negative 4. The only way to undo multiplication is by the opposite operation, which is division. So we're going to go ahead and divide both sides out by the number which we want to eliminate, which is negative 4. So on the right-hand side, we end up with a negative 4 divided by a negative 4. Those simplify out to give us 1, so we're left with 1x, which is the same thing as simply x. And on the left-hand side, negative 72 divided by negative 4 leaves us with an 18. So now that we know the value of x, let us go ahead and state our conclusion clearly. So keep in mind the question that was asked. The question was, for how many hours was the water storage tank leaking? So we're going to go ahead and state the following conclusion. So we'll say that the water storage tank was leaking for 18 hours. Now that we've stated the conclusion, let's go ahead and check our result to verify that we are indeed correct. So we always start off with the original equation. So 478 is equal to 550 minus 4x. But we actually know the value of x now, so we're going to go ahead and substitute that in. Meanwhile, everything else is going to remain exactly the same. And now we know that x is equal to 18. So now on the left-hand side, we can't do anything there, so we're just going to go ahead and bring it on down. And then we have 550 minus 4 times 18, which is equal to 72. So on the left-hand side, again, all we have is 478. And on the right, once you subtract these two numbers out, you will find out that we also end up with 478. So we have a true statement. 478 is equal to 478. So therefore, our solution is correct.